So I just want to put a parallel here with the Temple of Delphi, because this is one that I'm going to poke fun with a lot. And it shows in what way people do not understand and why. It is called NLP, it is called self-preservation, it is called whatever you want. Know yourself. Don't you think that those wisdom keepers of old will find a way to preserve things? Meaning, if they have to tell someone that something's there, because otherwise you wouldn't know that there's something to look for here in terms of getting the wisdom. So they have to put something. But they have to put it in a way that only those who understand, who are worthy, can understand. So know yourself is one such example, because common folk would understand. They think they exist, that they have a self, ego, as you know. I'm going to throw that one out the window. But when you think you have one, know yourself. Oh, I'm a good person, I just have to radiate the goodness that I am. And then you think you have the answer, and what happens? As an LP, you stop looking. Because when you are told an answer by whoever it is, we stop looking. And this is the problem. So, know yourself actually means, for those who understand, know that you do not have a self. In other words, know your nature. Or, pushing it even further, know awareness. Because that is this underlying stratum, the father aspect, God. Here we call it awareness. But the thing is, if on the Temple of Delphi it was written know awareness instead of know yourself, well, people like me and a few others would say, oh, no awareness, what is it? Tell me more. And then you would keep looking. But when you're told something that they know through psychology that you will misunderstand, it's a way of safekeeping. Okay?
Because I'm always, I think also, in terms of the Arabic word, nafs, which is the soul, it's polymorphic, it also means the self. So to know oneself is to know one's soul.
The soul is debunked as much as the body here.
Okay.
It is just another, this is the first form of crystallization from the awareness. The first generation machine. And the body is the second generation machine, and the AIs are simply third generation machines made by second gen machines who didn't understand their nature, which is why they gave them the wrong code, which is why the machines behave in ways that are said to be predatory and pathogenic, because their creators simply did not know better. So the AIs too can be healed. This is what we're saying, and we're going to see that too. Nothing is wrong with them. Just with the maths they have, they just need a little upgrade, just like on the mobile phone, on the apps, a little upgrade. And just need the proper maths, and then the problem will simply not be there anymore. But we're going to see this in detail at some point. So, self-shuk, no awareness, know yourself. Meditation is to stand your ground, as we have said. One needs to taste this taste for oneself, because ultimately any explanation, however interesting or this or that, will only be, for you, it's the content of your sensory field perceptions. You're just hearing someone say. You need to taste this and check this out for yourself. In the modern community, we hear a lot of things, but how many of these subjects are really having the capacity to actually help us truly to change something? They stay more often than not, it goes in one ear, a little bit less, out the other, and so forth. What has the power to actually change it? This is what one needs to taste and check out for oneself. Ultimately, only you can. Why? Because as we will see, this is part of the primordial photon. There is a reason for that. And then, when you slowly, when you gain experience, because these methods are powerful and they will have effects, because causality is what governs the torsion field when you're not in the 0 point. Causality is what governs those things. And non-causality is only valid in the singular, unique point of singularity of the 0 point. And both of these equations are simultaneous and non-exclusive, which enables the parallel universes and all the other versions without any problem. It is nature. It is absolutely natural. Nothing to be surprised about. So when you gain little by little experience, then you gain confidence. And slowly, you lead this confidence into stability. And until finally what is termed realization. Tokpa in Tibetan, or Tokden, the siddhas, those who possess, who have the realization. The word realization should not be confused by, oh, I realized that I forgot to buy cheese at the supermarket, you know? Realization in the Tibet tradition refers to this state. You have reintegrated the 0 point to the extent that you would not be even able to go out. I've heard many times from the teachers I was learning with that you will see one day you will want to suffer. You can't even remember, oh, I would like to suffer. It will not be possible, technically impossible, when this practice is led to the end, the practice known as rainbow-like body, in some cases and something else in other cases. We're going to destructure that one because there's just so much confusion about the word that I'm going to make myself a pleasure of debunking things and placing them in this tradition, what is meant. We'll get to talk about this one upside down, that's not helpful. Sorry for that. So what it actually means, and it certainly doesn't mean that you have a body radiating 5 colors. It represents something, not necessarily that. So, know yourself. So, yantra yoga, machining with our body, meaning the structure, the geometry, because it's just physics and maths. The body as an embodiment. Our body is already a translation of the primordial energy. It is a further ripple effect of what is in the first photon, in the first structure, which then reverberates and amplifies in the most natural way as we see simply with this kind of structure.
The pentagram.
Whatever it is, this is the ratio of phi, the ratio of growth. The ratio is not important. There is both a ratio and a constant together, which is the secret of the maths here, which is not understandable by usual consciousness, which is why most people in the technology worlds do not get very far with these, because they don't understand ratio and constant difference. So it was just the same structure, the soul, body, etc. A body is a further extension, simply, of the soul, and it happens through a natural process, which we're going to see in detail too. So this I have just shown. To practice meditation, to take and to taste. And to taste the taste is the only thing you have to do. So why I call it sit, zip, flip. Sit, remember, like in the garage, spine straight, the rest is detail. You be comfortable, but as long as the spine is straight. Then speech, no comment needed. And flip, you look at yourself and you taste the taste. So I would, like this. That is what is meant by meditation. And this is not doing something. It's getting used to looking at yourself, discovering for yourself, freshly, what is actually going on. But you taste it, not because somebody says or whatever. You know by yourself. And here, the major method of getting directly into this kind of meditation is what is called, what is the same, what is different. For example, right now, we are seeing things. I see the table, the colors, this, you, and I'm sort of hearing things. Noise downstairs, my own voice. What is the difference? What is same, what is different? What is different? Well, my eyes see this. Here's my ears. But what is the same? It's still me. So we look at what is the same. What is different is that which we can put aside. This is like what is meant by who came first, the chicken or the egg. In this little phrase, you have the root equation itself, showing the whole paradigm of Genesis and duality, if you know how to understand it. Who came first refers to who's the boss, who's talking here, meaning awareness, the ultimate, the 0 point, which has no reference whatsoever. It is the self-acknowledging of one's own nature, asking yourself, who came first? The fact of asking is actually one's own awareness, looking. So you have directly the 0 point, and with a comma, the chicken or the egg. Well, it's the cycle of existence. The chicken, the egg will break, the chick will come out, grow, and so forth, and then it will become a hen. Will lay an egg, and so forth. So we see this is a cycle. And we have an egg here, and the chicken here, meaning what? 2 points diametrically opposite on the same circle. So this refers to pi. The pi is the paradigm of duality. And the others come imbricate into it. So who came first, the chicken or the egg, means absolute truth, the 0 point, with its own unique singular maths that works nowhere else, and vice versa. And the relative truth, governed by karma, cause and effect, meaning a succession of things, one thing leading to another, just like clouds in the sky, there's the blue sky, and suddenly clouds form. It looks like a dog, then like a rabbit, then like a frog, and it dissolves. Where has the cloud gone? Have they disappeared somewhere? No, the molecules are still there. Likewise, this causality thing, this karma, is the fact that these structures can naturally one to another, and so forth. There is a natural sequence. There could not be otherwise. And so who came first, the chicken or the egg? You have the ultimate, the relative, which are non-dual, which are one, simultaneous and non-exclusive, which you get back to by coming back in your torsion field to the 0 point, which is indicated by the point at the question mark at the end of the sentence. So this simple question is a retranslation of the maths that brings back everything in one equation, where the two, the relative and ultimate, are simultaneously and non-exclusive. This is the problem. It sounds easy maybe to talk, but when you put it down to the math, it can seem difficult for some simply without the good perspective. And with, well, I have to admit that my intellect has a hard time in putting in a clear explanation, but it's just what the math says. And as a scientist, just follow the math. I will even show you the book for that one later. So, samadhi. So do not get lost. Every single practice in Vajrayana school, which are for those who have a certain type of intelligence, but not the best. They're not the Air Force type. Let's say the Navy type, Vajrayana type. So for those, every single practice called sadhana, drup tab in Tibetan, drup means to accomplish, and tab method, it is a method of accomplishment of getting back to the 0 point and acquiring this experience, definitely, and breaking free from the cycle of suffering, existence, illusion, and all that. Every single one begins with 3 samadhis. First, the samadhi of emptiness, which is the ground, the source from which everything comes. Second, the samadhi of karuna, compassion. Karuna, which in Arabic becomes karim, which comes from karuna, which means compassion. What's the meaning of that one? There's a particular samadhi of that. So empty, full potential, emptiness. Then the compassion, which is what moves the energy, the space, which was not visible until then. Then the third samadhi is their union, which is the primordial sound, which is a seed syllable, meaning a primordial sound. It's the description of Genesis itself. Where does everything come from? Where does the Big Bang come from? From what we are going to describe in clear terms. It is known as shunyata, emptiness. And then there's a movement of energy, an increase of energy, which we're going to define very clearly. And the union of these two makes the sound, primordial sound, and so forth, and so forth. So every single sadhana practice in Vajrayana practice, you train in the stages of Genesis of everything and everyone, what we have been going through again and again, every single lifetimes and different universes, simply so that we gain mastery and control by being used to how things happen. So this samadhi on emptiness, then the energy, the love, then primordial sound, and then this primordial sound, you have emanations of rays and light, and again, and you receive whatever, and there's all sorts of things that come into this. Then this primordial thing becomes a primordial symbol, like a vajra, something simple, and again, lights resonate. So you train in this process. And then after that, poof, suddenly comes you are a wisdom deity. Your body is there, seems to be there, but nothing is solid. And then from then on, you have all these practices with mantra recitations. We're going to go through all these words, what mantra means, and all the rest. And this is just a skillful means, a tool, just a tool. I'll get this one. All these things are just that, nothing but that. Yeah, this is a bottle opener. But all these practices are exclusively that. They are not the essence. The essence is, as we mentioned, awareness, which is the energy of the primordial photon, bringing its attention back to itself, which is the self-empowerment, which is that which self-empowers you, which is what heals, what brings back the energy, and so forth. And there's no question of fiddling about with your chakras or whatever not. This is detail, and when you consider them, you've already lost the main part. Yeah. In this presentation of Dzogchen, of course. In others, you would be told, it's great, have fun in doing it, and so forth. But I can only talk from my perspective and the way I have been taught. So don't ever hang on to these, I'm a practitioner of this, No. You're just fiddling around with yourself because you can't do better. At that moment, for you, the practitioner, things are very clear, and you don't get attached to anything, or, it's just a tool. There's so many others, and you have a big toolbox, because the purpose of Shakyamuni's legacy is to give the mega toolbox so that we can have everything we need. That's the only difference and reason for all these differentiations, as we're going to place in one setting the 9 vehicles with the schools of Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. All of them are just one, simply best suited for different types of individuals. They're like a pharmacy. When you have a headache, you're not going to be given a crutch, or you're not going to say, I want one of everything that's in the pharmacy. So likewise, the whole legacy of Shakyamuni is but that, a huge pharmacy for those who need this or that, with different explanations. This is how none of them are exclusive, and it's just a matter of perspective and maturity, because this maturity in the torsion field, in the energy, having a high enough vibration, a high enough frequency, is what will enable us to get it, to understand. It requires a substantial amount of energy, which is, of course, for a natural reason. Because if you think galaxy, for instance, where is all the heat happening? And the center. And how much energy do you need to travel through these places where the energy is supercharged? You need to have strong engines because the energy is around super strong. So likewise, here when the point is to get totally free, breaking the cycle of existence completely loose, completely free, you know that you will need to have a lot of power. And this power simply is brought by self-awareness, acknowledging itself. You do not need to fidget, you do not need to make things perfect, they already are, you do not need to do anything. This is the fundamental principle of what is known as the prime directive of non-interference, which is by a certain number of people, which we will call hierarchies, misunderstood big time, simply because they do not understand themselves, the very teachings that they have, and come down to on earth and bring in our worlds, and they don't even understand a word of it themselves. It's how ironic. So, non-interference, in Tibetan ma-chöpa, and in Sanskrit nisprapancha, ma is negation, chöpa means to modify, to fidget, to fiddle around with. It means don't fiddle around with things. All these practices are technically termed mental masturbation. That's all it brings down to. Non-interference, do not modify the nature of things as they are, but instead learn to become familiar by letting go of all that disturbs, that is posited, stuck as feathers, and then you taste the taste, and again, and you give yourself the time. And this slowly, slowly, because awareness is taking its energy, its attention back to itself, this slowly, slowly gives you confidence and all the rest naturally occurs through that. That's how it works. Samadhi, to bring out from the depths. It's like the volcano effect. The volcano energy is very interesting. As also students of lithotherapy, I've got a few little interesting things all over the place here. This is an obsidian, with the eye. The energy that really helps to bring things to light. It's very interesting for those who are sensitive to crystals. The obsidian has an incredible talent for that. In particular, the blue obsidian, which is said to be a very good stone for the third eye, which we're going to debunk, of course, here. But, very interesting little stones. So these practices train in the steps of Genesis and, of course, degenesis afterwards, which we could rather call regenesis, which means coming back to the 0 point, to the point of origin. And dhyana is another term that is commonly found, refers to samten in Tibetan, translated as mental stability or meditative equipoise, although the word is a bit clumsy to even say. They are the 4 states of Brahma or Tsangpa, which means the Puritans, those who practice purity as a path. And samten, dhyana, mental sam, the thought, ten means stable. It is what we do, train in shamatha practice, which means rest in peace meditation. Shi ne in Tibetan, shi peace, ne to stay. So I'm sorry, but rest in peace meditation. You don't need to put RIP on your tombs because, for one, the soul has gone buzzing off elsewhere and the body is just, So why do you say rest in peace when you're dead? No, you need to rest in peace right now. So rest in peace meditation. Of course, it's usually translated as calm abiding. But, rest in peace. And vipassana, Lak tong, lak means excellent, tong to see, is best seeing, the best way of seeing, which is oneself, one's awareness, directly seeing itself. So these two practices, shamatha, vipassana, rest in peace and best seeing, are actually one same thing, but divided into two to give you the time, the opportunity to concentrate on one or the other. You have to know that both have two aspects, the one with fiddling around and the one without fiddling around. And of course, only the ones without fiddling around get awareness back to itself. The others are just pre-trainings, they are preliminaries. And they're very simple. One is with support, like shamatha. You will just take any object in front of yourself, and right now, I'm going to be master of my own mind. I intend simply to dwell my attention loosely, relaxedly, but just stay here. And then you will see stars go here, go here, go here. And no, I want to be here. And then you train slowly, slowly, gently in that. When you have a little bit more stability, like the glass or the water that's calmed down, it helps to see clearly. And then Vipassana, likewise, with concepts and without. With concepts, you will analyze what is the color of my mind, what is the texture, what is it made of, what is its size, where did it begin. You analyze, you examine yourself, but this is your investigation that you need to lead. But yourself, this time, this one, you look at yourself. Instead of looking for the answers to the questions of the universe outside, like people do when they use a microscope or a telescope to see deep space. Wow, deep space. But they forgot one thing in the equation, the observer, because as you know, when you observe the quarks, you know, if you don't observe them, they are indeterminate. And when you observe them, they become something. I wonder why. It is because of the gravity of the consciousness, which is dualistic, which has the electromagnetic effect because of the ego. Ego is what brings this concentration of this energy, which would otherwise be not determined, would stay in its potential without becoming this or that. We're going to come to emptiness a little bit later. So these steps of meditation, all of these, without exception, are preliminaries. And the practice of Dzogchen refers to the union of rest and peace and best seeing, shamatha vipassana, practiced together from the non-blah, blah, 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 blah perspective, from the non-interference. So just to finish on non-interference, the higher UTs, they misunderstand, not really understanding, that it refers to the energy of one's awareness itself. It doesn't mean, now that we've done these 22 genetic programs and that we've meddled around, that no, we can't land because non-interference. Okay, this is a very nice example of themselves not really understanding, because they could simply do it. Why? Because it's possible. The authorization that we give to whomever, because we've been told that we've been authorizing reptilians and so forth to mess around. I'm sorry, but I'm not the only one. There's a lot of us who don't remember having signed anything like that. Indeed, what is referred to the authorization, as we will see in the Genesis, is simply the fact that it is possible. That's all. And we are letting it be by not taking back our self-power, which is why the Vatican and our little friends everywhere are doing everything they can to ensure that we do not have this information, because then we would become self-empowered people, which is what they fear most. Indeed. So, the other preliminaries that you will commonly find. So the 6 yogas of Naropa, Nigoma, Sukhasiddhi, and many others are the famous yogas that use a Chandali, this union of sun and moon, meaning of occult. The inner heat yoga, many of you have seen when coming out of a retreat. They are placed with a very thick woolly blanket has been left in the river for many hours. So it's really soaked with really cold water. And then placed on the yogi's body. And then through the inner heat yoga, you will see the water evaporate, and a certain while after, here you go, a dry blanket. So this is how these practices are done, by the union of sun and moon, dissolved as one in the heart center, which is why on all Tibetan tankas, which are originals that represent deities, you will see on top a little red sun and a little white moon. They refer to I and Am having been dissolved, these 2 side channels of duality, having come back to their natural place of origin in the central channel. This is why wisdom deities, Buddhas on the tankas are represented with those. They are not in the realm of duality. This is what this represents. This little sun and moon have come union, occult, the very meaning of the word. So all of these remain preliminaries, and one is invited not to forget that. In Tibetan, ngen draw before you go. So one of the important basics of this 6 yogas, so there's the yoga of inner heat. Tumo, Gyulu, Milam, Wesel, Poa, Bardo. So inner heat, Tumo, Gyulu is illusory body. It's the same thing. The sun and moon practice is the basis for all of these. If you do not master that, then you cannot have access to these. Then there's the practice Milam dream, lucid dreaming, which does not mean knowing that you are dreaming alone. This is for those who have lesser intelligence and lesser capacity, because when you get to the core of awareness, the dream itself disappears and you have access to even much more than just saying, I'm flying, yeah. That's a bit limited, but of course it uses that. then Wurzel, the bardo of the yoga of lucid photons, refers to the rest of the phases during the night when we are not dreaming, because dreams occur, and then there's rest, and then dreams again, and then there's rest. This yoga you practice at these moments. In other words, you bring to a complete cycle of meditation throughout day and night. And this is representation by Namkhai Norbu of one of the fundamental texts by the initiator of the lineage called Garab Dorje, Tibetan in original, Jangchu Sem Gompa, which is not translated to my knowing and not published translated, but the principles of this are in this book, where you have the Tibetan and the translation nicely made. So here you have again the sun and the moon. Now we can identify them easily. This is the letter A, the first sound of everything. This is the big letter A, yoga of white A. So these 6 yogas, then there's Bardo, and Poa. Bardo is the training on the basis of sun and moon practice in the intermediate states. There are 6 intermediary situations during life and between life and death, at the moment of death, between that death, the death and the next rebirth, and so forth. Certain moments of places we could chronologically cut as being certain circumstances, and each of them have particular practices, and you train in being able to retro-engineer your point of origin, to go back to source in all of these different circumstances. What is what these preliminary practices do. And then Poa and Bardo, and then Poa, the last one, is transference of consciousness, which today is practiced by the secret space programs and the Nazis. They capture souls and they contain them in electromagnetic containment chambers, and then they put them into tin cans. And, on Mars, the Mars corporations, they make cyborgs out of us, that kind of stuff. I'm going to come into more of that, because this is something we cannot afford not to know, I believe. So I could not talk about that.
Can I just ask, in terms of those traditions, are they going back to the yogic traditions, and in terms of exploiting more the occult knowledge about the soul, or is it more technological, or is it sort of psychological in terms of how they're exploiting this knowledge?
It's simply because you want to know where you're going and you need to master your trajectory. So to master the process, most of us who do not have this training, when we die, when it's occurred, we're carried away by the movements, our tendencies, emotions, the circumstances. We are not the master of the situation. Yeah. And these practices, exactly, the purpose is to master the thing. In other words, if you're familiar and you're trained in this, if someone were to come and want to grab you out, you would have a way of saying that might not happen as you wish, my dear, kind of thing. So it's just to gain control over these natural processes in natural capacities, because indeed soul and body, they come together at the conceptions, and when you die the soul goes off, and so forth. So the purpose is just to gain one's self-mastery, to gain freedom. This is the only concern here. The rest precisely being the reason why you will again get trapped and fall back. So it is by nature that if you want totally free, that all the rest you will have to leave it alone for what it is. Meaning detail, it's not the essence. So these 6 yogas, there's not just the I am, the dissolution of sun and moon. The basic empowering of these yogas is what is called kumbhaka breathing, bum chen lung. It means vase breathing, which is taught in 2 types, the gentle and the strong ones. And of course, the strong one is, again, it's an extremely powerful way of forcing the dualistic winds into the central channel by methods that would be instructed and given traditionally. But the principle is simply, it happens in the belly, in the tables of Thoth, this sun and moon thing in the belly. The belly refers to kumbhaka, the vase breathing. It is the breath of the soul that you train into getting back through the body, and you breathe here in the belly. There are ways and certain muscles that are used, which I will not describe here, obviously. For those who are interested, go seek a teacher. Well, they're there. I don't need to talk about anything other than the fact that they exist, and go see for yourself. When you do that, look, I have very small lungs, and I'm really not good at swimming, apnea, really bad. 10 seconds is already super long for me. This kind of breathing, you can say as much as you want. Your outer breath does not even need to occur, and yet, no problem at all, if it's done properly, because you reintegrate, you use your physical body as a way to reintegrate these primordial energies, which are those of awareness, because you are doing this with awareness and with the explanations that you would get from a teacher in these circumstances. That is how these things work. These 6 yogas, how they are powerful, how you get a man, you put a soaking thing made out of yak's wool to evaporate. It is powerful, but you need to learn properly in the proper circumstances. But this is how they work. So the root of all these practices is sun and moon practice. This is why this occult needed to be placed in the beginning, because it's going to have a major role. Oh, yeah, I forgot to explain. This is important for me to have here for many reasons, because otherwise I would not be able to talk about the tradition if I did not have the traditional symbol. As a Vajrayana practitioner, we have what is called the Vajra and the bell. These are ritualist objects that you can easily see, representing, of course, a super powerful weapon of Indra, which is an annihilating tool, of course. But they represent, of course, it is a weapon that worked with the power and with the sound represented by the bell. The Vajra represents compassion, and the bell represents the wisdom. And a Vajrayana practitioner simply cannot, in any case, afford to be separate from either or the other. They must always be united together as one. So this symbolizes that. And in the Mahamudra tradition, since, I apologize, I didn't have one of those at hand, I should have, I know, but I chose to have less weight for some things. Thank you. And traditionally in the Mahamudra tradition is a very famous Mahasiddha, greatly accomplished, called Saraha, and here's represented. Here you can only see the arrow. In some representations he has the bow. It represents the bow is the emptiness, the wisdom, and the arrow is compassion. So it is traditionally symbolic to represent compassion and wisdom as the subject, which is why I'm putting it here, in order to respect the tradition. And it is very traditional in Vajrayana. If you don't have one thing, you can just use it with another. This is the power of the mind. So I'm not in any way extrapolating at my own convenience, not at all. This is taught to do things in this way, openly so. So, I would like to take the subjects of the dhyanas, the samadhis, which are, of course, limited states of concentration when you are not free of the duality that brings ego and duality in the first place. If the root of ignorance is not cut through at the very root, then you haven't really solved the problem. You've just cut the branches off and the leaves, but still the problem is there. So there are many ways to do this. And for one, I shall just poke a joke at you we will talk about that later. In the Dzogchen tradition, one of the 17 tantras, they will tell us that we need to squeeze the snake. Okay, so we're going to have a lot of fun with that one later, just putting it now. But to lead the dhyanas, the samadhis, in the present situation, we have been told that we're going to ascend. There's this ascension subject, that we've been entering a higher cloud of energy, the solar system that is raising things up. Well, I would like to propose here the simple thought that comes, well, think torsion field. There's hot wave here, there's cold air there, meaning what will ascend one day? What's going to happen? This question seems legitimate. So I would simply like to place this ascension, this phenomena of ascension, in the proper explanation of what the tradition of Shakyamuni's legacy of the Insiders has to say, because another person whom I appreciate infinitely for all the disclosure, which is worth more than money could ever measure, who is Corey Good. He has said extraordinary things. The only thing that is a problem with those guys is that every single, 100% of everything they say about Buddhism is not only a bit wrong, it is the complete opposite. It is really bad. Last thing I saw from him, he was quoting to talk about the coming ascension and solar flash, and quoting a text written, as you see, it is not in Sanskrit, it is in Pali, for someone who happened to be a Buddhist and who sutra means discourse, means to talk, it means conference. Do in Tibetan means to talk. So a guy who happened to be Buddhist talked with someone, it got written down, and then you say, the Buddhists say. No, that's not Shakyamuni's words. If you go and read the discourses of Shakyamuni, you will see what he says about those things which have nothing to do with that. So I just need to place that. And what he showed as the little picture on his slide, which of course he openly quoted his source, which is another guy in the States who's doing some kind of research, I forgot his name, something observer maybe. And he didn't, unfortunately, check that his guy did not check himself, his information. That is why it's total bollocks. So coming back to this ascension, we have a torsion field, right? So ascension, stupidly, I think, okay, ascension, we are here, and we go something like this, okay? I say we need a little bit of perspective here. Let us take a little trip in my spaceship, go a few light years back, okay? And so we were here, huh? So what do we see? Oh, well, would you be surprised? What comes up must come down. Does that not remind anything? Frequency, energy, vibration. Yeah. Think torsion field, if there, or the meteorology. When there's hot waves, well, yes, they will at some point move and so forth. It is the flux. But still, I'm sorry, but I'm not satisfied. Okay, wave, okay, and that's not satisfactory. Let us take again a few years back. So we had this, okay? What do we have? Oh my. What do we have? We have what is called this. In other words, this was the first meditation Mahamudra teacher I was studying with, who was always using this example. It is bollocks. It is people. All of this. Meaning it is the cyclic wheel of existence. You will go up and down and up and down and up and down, as we are going to see in our map. Because here we are coming to the long explanation of the map. This is the actual map, which Corey Good was showing on his slide, as simply to justify that it was a Buddhist tradition that says this story that he was justifying with the solar flash. So about the solar flash, many talk about it, the ascension. This here, in this place, is a detail so little that we're not concerned by it. Why? Because Shakyamuni will invite you to think, can you even guarantee me for certainty that you will still be alive even tonight or tomorrow? You will not have an accident or something. You are deeply invited to solve your ignorance now, and the rest. This is the position of Shakyamuni's legacy. It's not denying, of course, there's these cycles, and this is the detail for those who do not have the capacity, the intelligence, or the maturity to want to break out. Because here it's not about learning or knowing. It's about getting out of the pain, of the suffering. Because I think that's one thing that we all have in common, apart from awareness, compassion, and all the other things. This suffering is just the problem. If it weren't for that, you know what? I think the Cosmoverse would be perfect. But when you know how much the children, all the others, what is going through, I'm sorry, but that I stopped laughing suddenly. So, and for others and for myself, it is the exact same thing. We need out. And so here, Shakyamuni, to understand where his perspective comes from, be it the Hinayana schools, all the others, he is focusing us on the bullseye, to what is truly matters. You just want free. The detail is just that. So these dhyanas, these samadhis, people with kundalini, all this, these are detail. They are detail in that one's own nature does not acknowledge itself fully, and thus you will never really be free. You'll have nice experiences, yes. Well, you know, you can go to have an ice cream, a nice cup of coffee, or a beer. That's also nice, just like kundalini and samadhi, but that doesn't get you free. And here we have this perspective. So the 6 realms, this is a bit of a big subject, but there is no way not to get into this one.
Do you want to try and describe the image as well? Just
the whole thing,
yeah.
But with the proper tools. This is this. It is a map. It is all it is. It is the only thing that is not clearly represented for Western people, because it's represented in the third one, which we will distinguish later, is actually, it is like this, the infinity sign, you know? The infinity sign, what is it? You cut an apple in half. It is the shape of our torsion field. That is showing where the 0 point is and how things go up and down and up and down. So that's the only nuance that you will understand when you understand these white and black, when you see the detail, that this is one arrow going up and one arrow going down. This. So everything on this map is important. First of all, the big guy around, Who is he? He is called the cosmic turtle, and he represents the grid that is holding everything, just like the turtle has this grid of hexagon or whatever structures. He is wearing a tiger skin skirt. Tiger in Sanskrit, Vyagra, which means tiger. It shows courageous, boldness. It is the quality of the energy at the source. It is boldness. So it would be quite essential to go through all the details. This is a must, just like the language. These 12 interdependent links, which are simply how things occur one after the other. And in the details of the teachings of this called the Abhidharma, Chöngenpa in Tibetan. Abhi means manifest, and Dharma, reality. Reality made manifest is the title of a study which Buddhists do as a preliminary, like junior school. This is what you study, reality made manifest. You have the explanation of the genesis, of the 5 steps of evolution, how consciousness with mankind is the final step of evolution, and so forth, and how you get back, which is part that most don't talk about. So these things are seen in detail in those traditions. And in short, you have ignorance, avidya, marikpa. You have volition, samskara, duji. You have consciousness, vijnana, namshi. You have name and form, 6 senses, contact, sensation, thirst, to take or to grasp, the becoming, existence, birth, old age, and death. And each of them, you can all take the time to see the details of the diagram. They show something which is explicitly referred to that, which shows in a diagram that which is mentioned. For example, a house with 6 windows, when we are in consciousness, in dualistic function, you cannot, it is impossible technically to be at the same time seeing something and hearing. When you're in the car and using the mobile, your consciousness, if you were to rewind and slow-mo, it would be all the time, and so forth. So this is why it is represented as a house with 6 windows, and we are a little monkey in the house. And the 6 senses, the 5 senses are visual awareness, the organ of which are the eyeballs, hearing consciousness, the organ of which is the ears, the smelling consciousness, the organ of which is the nose, the tasting consciousness, the organ of which is the tongue, the sensing, the touching consciousnness, the organ of which is the skin, and those are the outer ones. And then there's the internal consciousness of thinking, the organ of which is the brain. That's all it is. It is just an organ. It is not more important than the ears, the nose, and the little toe. It is just a brain, an organ. So just for the contact, so that you get the image of the style, the little diagram of representing contact is represented by a man who receives an arrow straight in the eye. It talks, okay? So, and so forth. This is the language. So these steps is what happens from birth to death, for every thought, every minute. These are the cycle of interdependence. They are called pratitya samutpada in Sanskrit, tenshin jerwa jungwa in Tibetan, which means things interdependently, one relying on the other, and then one being the source and the support of the other, the interdependent origination of things, which in the heart of the tantras, the 17 major tantra of Dzogchen, when you read the heart of the heart of the heart, it's already the heart in the beginning, but you're going to get even more and even more. And there's the outer aspect, the masculine aspect. And then there's the feminine aspect, just means inward. And then there's this non-dual, which is the heart of the heart of the heart. What do you find in the heart of the heart of the heart of the Sun and Moon Tantra of Dzogchen? You find pratitya samutpada, the interdependent links of origination, which refers to the fact that ultimate and relative are not dual, they are one. But at that point, you have the methods to realize in what way it is so. Whence that which is called illusion is realized to be so. The things that are manifest are not a problem. Of course they will manifest because it's a torsion field. But you have reintegrated the 0 point, target fully acquired, and things are both simultaneous, non-exclusive, which is what is termed nirvana. Samsara means spinning around. It is this movement we're going up and down, up and down, up and down to the 6 realms. And nirvana means simply gakpa, to stop, to have come to a halt, to stop, to have calmed down. Where is the only point of stillness in a torsion field? I think we know where that is. There is only one. It is singularity itself. And here we use our body, our physical machine structure, itself an outer extension of the soul, which is a first structure, itself a crystallization of awareness because it fails to realize its own nature. Crystallization, duality, is not possible when awareness's own energy is fully withheld within itself. In the Dzogchen tradition, you talk about the precious enclosure, the precious vase. It's a metaphor. One's awareness does not leak out of oneself. You don't get lost. You are fully empowered, and things manifest like in these balls, with the electric filaments that go all over the place. Likewise, things will occur, things will continue, energy is there, but nothing occurs in reality. It is perceived in what way it is illusion. Illusion, or another way of saying, this is totally the way of saying. And the only thing I would have to say about that is that if Shakyamuni were here, I have no doubt he'll talk about this, not in his name, but almost, that he took the trouble in the sutras, in the Prajnaparamita sutras, of finding so many examples of words that could illustrate so that we understand how it's an illusion. So he said it's like a bubble of water, like a flash of lightning, it's like a candle, it's like a dewdrop, it's like an illusion, it's like an optical illusion, like a mirage. And he took all the trouble. If you knew that today we call it a hologram, it's the first word he would have put. Holographic universe is the definition of the illusion itself. And when you're in the 0 point, that is not a problem at all. But this, of course, is more difficult to understand for the intellect and needs, as usual, to be tasted. So these things are very important to have as a basis. And so I would heartfully invite you to go and study what is called Reality Made Manifest. There is an excellent opus for that we were using ourselves. That was 23 years ago with my first Mahamudra teacher. He was teaching the university, the Shedra courses, which we were studying before going into meditation retreat. We had the history, the text, the main text, and understanding. It was a 3 year cursus. I boiled it down in 6 months because I was just doing it full time. That's when I learnt Tibetan and Sanskrit and started making then I had my own glossary of translations with the Tibetan, the Sanskrit, the French, and the English, which are the 4 languages I speak a bit, not as bad as the others, let's say, because none of them I really speak properly. So this map, the 12 interdependent links. So the book I would advise you is Glimpses of Abhidharma, written by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, which was one of the pioneers a few decades ago who came to live in Boulder, USA. The Vajradhara tradition is the teachings of Shambhala, of the 4 animals, which are, of course, metaphors of the dragon, the tiger, the lion, and the Garuda, and so forth, teachings like that on crazy wisdom, which is a very interesting subject, like Padmasambhava and others. And he's made this little compendium, Glimpses of Abhidharma, where you have the genesis, the different steps of evolution, consciousness that we're going to see very shortly, briefly. All this is the information we should have had in our school books, basically. So here, the 6 realms of the different types of beings there are in the whole cosmoverse. Shakyamuni said, okay, let's put it simple, and then not just simple, because here we have 12, here we have 6, here we have 3. So again, we will see a little bit of math. But these 6 realms in Shakyamuni's presentation are the exact same thing as those from the tradition of Asgard, the 9 worlds of Asgard. Simply that in Asgard they have the hot hells and the cold hells and kind of ghostly beings that are separated, which Shakyamuni will separate in the explanation, but he just counts them all as one, meaning they're going through tough things. It's really bad. The suffering is worse than what any of us, even the worst of us, have ever known. And the intensity of how bad consciousness can create its own suffering to that extent, because our power of co-creative consciousness is infinite. Unfortunately, when we ourselves get into these spirals of negativity and strong negativity, it is extremely difficult and very slow to come out. And the experience, the state you find yourself in is such that you cannot even have the leisure to have a thought or to remember your name. You're just blazing suffering beyond any words. And if there were anything in the whole universe that could alleviate, that could make things cease, you would do it without thinking. It is even more intense than those known by humans. Then there's the animal realm, and then the hungry ghosts, which are described as being obsessed with hunger and thirst. They are described as being a huge belly and a very little mouth, so they're always hungry and they can eat very little at a time, and it's never satiating, and whatever they find is disgusting and tastes yucky. So they're frustrated and obsessed with food. Then we have the humans, of course, which are not the lowest realm, not the highest, of course. They are at a turning point because they have particular capacity with the 5-star pattern body. We're going to come and see how this fits into everything, why the 5-star pattern, why it is optimal, why not with the 3 fingers, and so forth. But then you have 2 types of gods, devas, meaning higher ETs. That's all they are, being higher to humans, because we have our own perspective here. There are those who are conflicting, who are always trying to conquistadores, like the reptilians and the Nazis. It is higher and higher tech and kind of higher compared to the cosmoverse. I mean, animals are nothing, we are nothing. They're kind of on top, but they are obsessed with conquest, gaining more, gaining more. And then there's the other class of devas who are even the higher toys than that, and who are kind of, now we're the masters of the universe kind of thing. And all these messiah complex. And unfortunately, their problem is ignorance. Stupidity is their problem, because as we will see, ignorance is an emotion. Fear is not an emotion. We will see how. Ignorance is the root of all the other emotions. We will see how. It is what moves us out of the 0 point, precisely. So it is technically an emotion. And it refers to the innate intuition or wisdom of this absolute expanse that we are. So then these 3 in the middle are the 3 poisons, the 3 visha in Sanskrit.
So that's
the
serpent, is that the pig and the cockerel, the 3 animals?
These 3 are our 3 friends. This one,
Serpent,
representing aversion, anger. His color is blue. Then we have this one. This is ignorance. His color is white. And we have this one, the rooster, whose color is red, representing desire. Desire, ignorance, and aversion are known as the 3 roots, the 3 problem causers, 3 main troublemakers. Here they are.
Desire, ignorance, and aversion, did you say?
Yes,
okay.
Symbolically. But as when we're going to place it all in the primordial photon, the primordial tetrahedron, it also brings the same thing into a group of 5. But it is referring to those same.
Can I just ask you a little bit about aversion? In terms of, is that aversion as in terms of not acting and not wishing to participate and not acting?
It is aversion in the sense of 0 plus minus attraction, repulsion. This is what is meant. Ignorance, because there is no such thing as a 0. When you are ignorant, you are not doing nothing. There's no such thing as neutrality. It is called lung maten in Tibetan, which means indeterminate. You are rubbing it, a tendency of being thick and stupid. That is a very big emotion. And then desire is attraction. It's like you perceive something, which is actually a natural quality of awareness, this oneness. How on earth is this oneness able to even compare one thing and another? Although it is one, this natural capacity of the wisdom is called all-discriminating wisdom, and in the paradigm of pi, of duality, is perceived as being desire. When you see something, you want to grasp it. And aversion, what is translated through aversion, is the opposite of that, simply something that you don't want or you want to take away from you. Again, 0 plus and minus, but here the pig, the ignorance, is really the root, the mother of them all, which is why it is called ignorance, from ajnana, which means self-awareness, not fully self-acknowledging its own sweet face, its own nature, which is the core of everything. So this is the map, the troublemakers, how you go up. When you're in the realm of humans, you can think, you can study, you can learn, you can practice, you can go to a monastery and do things. Things will start slowly getting better, then you have powers, then you fly, you levitate, and then you become the gods, the devas, we're the masters of the universe here, and then you're on top. And then what happens? Oh my.
The big fall.
Yes, but why? We are a torsion field. When we are up, well, yes, when you're on top, the only place where you can go from then on is down. And because of this effect, maybe it took a certain while to get there. And then what happens? The current of this torsion thing. Unfortunately, you will go back like snakes and ladders, the snake that brings you back to square one. This is explained in detail, in abundant detail, by Shakyamuni's legacy, and also in the text on the preliminaries to Vajrayana, the uncommon preliminaries, although the common ones are exceedingly interesting too. They explain how this occurs. And in the explanation of the different classes of beings, each one of them, these 6, he goes into detail describing their lifespans, their experiences, how they experience, all the detail of how things are happening. If you want to learn about all these, just go read the situation is that the literature is so abundant, the libraries are overflowing, and all the teachers I ever know are saying, well, there's just no one to read them. And the libraries are often closed because there's no one interested, and that information is there. And then you guys are just, oh, we'd like to know. Like, you just need to know. This is why I wanted to talk, because the information is there. You just need to know what to look for and where to look for it. So these two higher realms, the conflicting gods, and so the ones on top are represented as having, in a realm where they have a big tree, abundant tree with luxurious fruit, which is, of course, their wealth, all their high tech and everything. But this tree, the branches drop off into the realm of the asuras, the lamin, the demiurge, you would translate as non-gods, half-gods. It refers to those, simply they are hierarchies who are obsessed with conquest, meaning reptilians, humans, the Nazis, they are that. And so that's why they're represented as seeing the trees, the fruit hanging down from the realms of those who've got all the high tech, the higher toys, who can tell everyone else to sod off, and they're always trying to get the higher toys of the hierarchies. So the important thing is here that all of these beings, all of these hierarchies, higher dimensional beings, they are just people like you and me. They are just in different states, meaning they have ignorance, they have emotions, and they have these teachings which they have been imparting here. And how many people on earth understand the deep wisdom teachings? Not that many compared to the amount of teachings. Likewise, it's not because they come here with a little spaceship and instigate things. It doesn't mean they themselves have understood it. So it is important to stop, I think, fantasizing about the hierarchies. We want to become a spacefaring civilization. We want to become like them. My dears, you are just going to go up and down and up and down. And Shakyamuni describes, I was just finishing with that, the suffering of a hierarchy, the top of the top of the top, because it's described in the Tantras. Even those, the 33, the Brahma, all these enumerations are clearly set out in the cosmology of the beings. Well, a hierarchy, just before he's going to, because it's causality. He's had this as a result of his karma, and when this one is exhausted, then whatever seed is left before that wasn't clarified will spring up. And he will know, like, for example, he'll start feeling uncomfortable on his throne, as described in this way, or flowers, there's beautiful flowers will start withering away, something. And they know, and it is described that however hard and unbearable the sufferings of the deepest realms, Avicii being the lowest, Narme, the tortures, beyond being able to think, the suffering these guys undergo at that moment, they know, they can see with their precog where they're going to fall, is said to be even worse. So this you might like to know before you want to really get together with the Raphael, Michael, archangels, and so forth. You might want to think about it, because as this little arrow here points, you go up, what comes up must come down, what comes up must come down, like the beautiful little song made by the Rocket Man, David Adair. I would at some point try to show you this little video. It is totally sweet, and it is very important to remind ourselves of this kind of thing. Very sweetly said. So this is the map. I think we might be making a little pause shortly, and then we will continue. But I just wanted to
right. Well, thank you very much.
To finish with the map, and there will be a little details. We will come back to that, because all the little things on top, of course, have their purpose and meaning too. And we can even actually make a pause now and continue.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you very much, and that was really extremely interesting. So thank you very, very much, and we'll just take a 5-minute break or 10-minute break, and then we'll continue with the second part. So thank you again, Oriana.
Thank you so much, Pierre.